Hello and welcome back to Lucore Automotive Services. Today I'm in the shop with another 6-liter diesel. This one came into us with actually quite a few different problems. The first customer's complaint was the engine light was on and he said it was hard to start cold. After it would start, it would run fine all day long, fire right back up, no problems, no issues. He also complained of the cooling fan sounding like it's an airplane trying to take off. After doing some diagnosis, basically this truck, cold cranking, would pump white smoke out the tailpipe, and then initially sometimes it would fire, sometimes it wouldn't, but once it would fire up and run, it would run all day long. All right. Got to check the injectors and make sure they're doing what they need to do. Sounds like stiction. Stiction is when the shuttle valves inside the injector bind up and they don't cycle correctly, and then they don't pump enough fuel into the cylinders to actually run the vehicle. So it's getting a little bit of fuel, but not enough to fire it cold. So one of the tests I did was I plugged the block heater in after it was cold. So it was cold with a no start issue. Crank, crank, crank. White smoke out the tailpipe, won't start. So I plugged the block heater in, and it was a 60, 70 degree day. Plug the block heater in, come back a few hours, fires right up, runs rough, kind of angry like, and bounces right out, runs smooth, runs down the road, injectors look good. But that initial startup, that rough startup's a good sign of the injectors being worn out. We're actually going to put 8 new injectors in this truck because they have probably close to 100,000 miles on them. The truck actually has 200,000 miles on it. And under brake torque, under load, I was able to actually watch number 6 injector drop out a little bit. And what we found with number 6 when we got it out is you can actually see that combustion gases are passing the copper seal on the bottom of the injector and working their way up the lower body of the injector cup. So we were about to have a much worse failure with this injector than what we had initially. But again, we're replacing all 8. We'll change the engine oil, change the fuel filters, make sure everything's okay. So one of the other problems we had was this engine. You could drive it down the road, haul whatever you want with it, and it wouldn't get above 150 degrees on the temperature gauge. On the IDS, it read 150 degrees. The oil temperature sensor read 150 degrees. So, pretty sure it needed a thermostat. So I pulled the thermostat out, and sure enough, that thermostat is stuck open. It's not actually regulating the water, and it's not allowing it to get up to temperature. So we have a new Ford Motorcraft thermostat ready to get dropped back in here, which is the last step in bringing this truck back to life. I've also put in a new oil temp sensor for the oil temp sensor code. It has a hard code, so we're going to put a sensor in it. The pigtail's already been replaced at another shop. Hopefully that new oil temp sensor will resolve our code issue, because the oil temp sensor having an issue like that could cause the cooling fan to come on and cycle into maximum cooling. So I'm going to finish putting this thermostat back together, fill it up with coolant, fire it up, and then we'll take it for a test drive, see how she does. Since the truck has 200,000 miles on it, and I didn't know if they'd ever been changed, I went ahead and changed the nipple cup seals. And with 200,000 miles on it, they were probably the original ones. This truck actually had excellent high pressure oil readings, but I didn't want to have any regrets, so I went ahead and changed those out while I was in there. The stand tubes looked great. I went ahead and reused those. No signs of any fraying or mushing. They get mushy and they get distorted. If they look weird, then you need to change them and just put new ones in. They were the updated style tubes. We've cut our teeth on quite a few of these trucks. We've gotten pretty good at making them run right. This truck is actually a 200,000 mile truck. It still has head bolts, original head gaskets to my knowledge. It just recently had a EGR cooler and oil cooler put in it somewhere else. But other than that, it seems to be a pretty original-ish 200,000 mile 6-liter diesel. So we'll get this thing fired up, run it through some test drives, make sure I'm happy with everything, and then we'll give it back to the owner so he can go haul some grain with it. So I put the battery charger on this last night on a trickle charge to make sure I have good strong batteries for this initial fire up. Anytime you open up the high pressure oil system on these trucks, it takes a while to get the air out of them to get these things to fire. So it takes a pretty extended crank to get these things to fire the first time. I've rolled the key over a few times to try and get the lift pump to fill up the fuel system as much as it can. But we're gonna go ahead and crank her over and see if we can get her to fire up. How long it takes for these things to crank over. It fired up cold, so that's a move ahead, and it's idling nice and smooth, so all 8 injectors are definitely firing good. I'll grab my IDS and hook it up inside the truck so I can watch the numbers while I drive down the road. I'll get this thing up to operating temperature, and then I'll change the engine oil, change the top fuel filters with Motorcraft fuel filters. That's a very important tip. You always want to use Motorcraft oil and fuel filters in these. We have definitely seen filters cause a lot of problems in the injection systems on these trucks. I pull out filters out of these things all the time that don't have the seals in the right places, and it can cause problems that you don't need. So as this 2004 F350 comes to a close, we replaced all 8 fuel injectors for stiction issues, basically creating white smoke on cold startup with a no start condition. While I had the injectors out, I replaced all 8 nipple cup seals just to make sure that I don't have problems with high side oil pressure problems after having this all apart. With 200,000 miles, they've probably never been done. When I pulled them out, they were squared out, so they're absolutely needed to be done. Everything else looked pretty good. We replaced the V-band clamp on the turbo downpipe because it was leaking. It was probably put on and taken off a couple times, and the last time it was not put on correctly. I put a new V-band clamp on, made sure that the opening was positioned between the hang tab on the top. If you get that off, it'll bind, and sometimes they won't seal up correctly. I replaced the thermostat because it was sticking open and not allowing the engine to come up to proper operating temperature. Not a big deal. It's pretty easy thing to figure out on that one. The oil temp sensor had a new pigtail put on it at the previous shop, but it still was setting a P197 code, which is an oil temp sensor circuit, or short to ground, or wiring, or PCM. We put a new oil temp sensor in it from Motorcraft to make sure that we had a proper sender with proper signal. Cleared the codes, just got back from a 30-mile test drive. No more problems with the oil temp sensor. That's good. It also doesn't sound like an airplane taking off anymore because the oil temp sensor is not freaking out the cooling fan. After all that's done, we changed the engine oil and filter. We also changed both fuel filters to make sure that we had proper Motorcraft filters in there. Now it's time to call the customer, tell him his truck's ready to go haul trailers and move livestock and do whatever it is he does with this thing. But 200,000 miles, still has the original head bolts in it. I'd say that's a pretty good truck.